Hello and welcome to session 258 in the AISafety.com reading group. Tonight we will be discussing how might we align transformative AI if it's developed very soon by Holden-Karnofsky. Holden-Karnofsky is the current co-CEO of Open Philanthropy and the co-founder of GiveWell. This was posted on Less Wrong Alignment Forum, and I believe also his personal blog, Cold Takes. We will only be discussing the first third of this post today, and I expect the second will come in subsequent weeks. Part of the reasons why I think this is a really interesting post is because of Holden-Karnofsky. He is one of the people with the most social credibility in the AI safety world, and in case we get a fire alarm for AGI, then I could easily see Holden-Karnofsky ending up as the person who would lead some kind of last-ditch effort to stop misaligned AGI. And for that reason, his opinions, even though they might not be technically very sophisticated, might be extremely strategically important. Holden-Karnofsky engages in a technique that he and Kotra calls NEARCASTING. That is answering the strategic questions under the assumption that the world is similar to today when we get AGI, or transformative AI as they phrase it. This is somewhat at odds with the general rationalist maxim of trying to live in reality, but the way they get around this is by not so much having the assumption that this is a world that's very similar to today's, but as something that happens very soon. Because obviously, if it happens very soon, the world is not going to be much different. The scenario they're having is an AI company, a fictional AI company called MAGMA, is developing a model called Alex that seems to be on the verge of dramatic improvements in capability. Immediately when I heard the word Alex, giving like a human name for this AI, that's a worrying sign in the sense that it's very easy to anthropomorphize these AIs, and that's something we should be aware of, on the lookout for when we read this text. The technique is called human feedback on diverse tasks, and crucially, MAGMA has a 6-month to 2 years lead on the competition. And not only do they have this lead, they know that they have this lead. There's no explanation given why, but the question is then, how can MAGMA use this lead to try to ensure a good outcome of transformative AI? There's a very brief description of the alignment problem, basically just that the default path to the default path to transformative AI leads to an AI that desires to take over, that is unaligned, and we can't detect that desire, and that is a problem that seems at least reasonably hard, possibly insanely hard, and that's basically all that Holden-Karnofsky writes about the alignment problem. It's a really basic analysis, and I think we should, when we read the text, be on the lookout for conclusions that follow from this perhaps too simplified description of the alignment problem. One of the key simplifying assumptions is that Holden-Karnofsky is only focusing on the leading lab, stating that if we considered more AI labs, well, he would be saying roughly the same thing about them. I don't think that's necessarily true. Both because the labs won't know that they are leading, they certainly can't be certain that they are leading, and if there is a larger field, then a runner-up would almost certainly have a very different conclusion. OpenAI, for instance, have explicitly stated that if they perceive themselves to be a runner-up, they will stop their current project and assist the leading AI lab if it's sufficiently aligned. So MAGMA'S predicament in this case, or dilemma, is that they need to navigate the risks of taking actions and not taking actions. If they do take actions, well, obviously they have a very powerful AI on their hands, and it's possible that this AI will just take over the world. And that may, in fact, be a lot easier than expected. Holden-Karnofsky gives an example, a scenario of this, which requires the AI to both do hacking, social manipulation, technological development, and also being economically productive. This is where I would give an example of anthropomorphizing, because here we have 5 human strategic skills that the AI is just barely above the human level at. And I think that's very unlikely that we're going to see AI with this specific profile, that it can do the same things as humans can do, just a slight bit better. I don't think that's very likely. I think it's much more likely that we are going to see a dramatic improvement in one of these 6 cognitive superpowers, and then subhuman levels below, where the AI needs to substitute humans for this. Now, opposite action risk are inaction risk, and that is by not doing anything. Then at some point this lead will be gone, and the second best AI lab will then be able to deploy transformative AI. And if they do that, then by definition they are less careful. They might also be weaker for other reasons, but I think the inaction risk in this case is very real. So this is MAGMA'S goal: to reduce the odds that other, less cautious actors cause a catastrophe by deploying misaligned AI systems, while avoiding catastrophic misalignment from MAGMA'S own systems. The word that has often been used about this dilemma is the requirement to perform a pivotal action and a pivotal act. And this is something that it's a word that Holden-Karnofsky explicitly does not use. I think there's a probability that this is done for like political reasons, that he doesn't want to. Obviously, you can't just come out and say I want to take over the world, because that a lot of people will disagree with this. But it's unclear to what extent the omission of this is something that is deliberate, or is because Holden-Karnofsky does in fact not think that a pivotal act is required. If we assume the latter, that a pivotal act is not required, then we'll notice from this goal that it just say reduce the odds. And reducing the odds, well, if you make it 10% less likely, well, then you've reduced the odds, and that's kind of counted as a success. In my book, that's totally inadequate. If we see current 99% probability of catastrophe, then then MAGMA is in a unique situation that they need to leverage to drive down the probability of catastrophe down to less than 1%. Just a tiny improvement from the only strategic actor that can do this is just plainly insufficient. So in Holden-Karnofsky's analysis, this is the only way to actually do this is by enlisting the help of the transformative AI. There are 5 categories of ways to help. There is defense, alignment, coordination, technologies to enforce regulatory agreements, and advisor applications. We'll go through these 5 now. But one thing I would just say first is that Holden-Karnofsky is exclusively considering the strategic options that include getting help from the AI. And MAGMA may have many other strategic options. A key one would be to demonstrate deceptive alignment, which, if possible, would be very impactful and might not require the AI's help. Let's start with defense, deterrence, or hardening. In order to do this, you need to deploy the AI systems as widely as possible, and then when the competitor catches up in 6 months to 2 years, well, there is no easy targets, no free energy that this possibly unaligned AI can take. Now, this strategy, deploying the AI as widely as possible, is obviously the same thing that an AI developer that doesn't care about AI safety would do, right? If you Meta would be an example. Facebook's AI don't care the least about alignment. So deploying the AI system as widely as possible is just their plan. So in this way, this allows Meta an easy way to alignment wash their capability focused AI research. Holden-Karnofsky notes a number of limitations with this, including that this only helps against systems that have roughly similar capabilities. If another system, like recursively self-improves through an intelligence explosion, then this will not help. It's also a moving target as capabilities increase, and we're not really solving the problem, we're just buying time. The key problem I have with this is that if we just harden like 10% of the systems, then that is clearly insufficient, because the AI will just take over the remaining 90%. We need to harden so many systems that we have an overwhelming majority of them. This has sometimes been formalized through free energy, like taking out all the free energy that an AI would be able to, an unaligned AI would be able to use to do mischievous things. But this in practice is really, really unpleasant, because a lot of the things that an AI could do, if it was unaligned, are things that humans really, really like to do. Like the most extreme example would be control over our nuclear weapons, which is something that currently humans are in charge of the defense, and there's some free energy because a superintelligence could do that better. So obviously, in order to improve the defense, we need to hand over the control of our nuclear weapons to this hopefully aligned superintelligence, and there's a lot of people who are going to strenuously disagree with that plan. The specific things that Holden-Karnofsky discuss are patching security vulnerabilities. The problem from my point with this is, one, that it requires training in hacking. So we need to in fact train the transformative AI explicitly in a strategically very powerful and very dangerous technology, hacking. The second problem is, like, we are, in order to remove the free energy, the vulnerable system, we need to patch literally every Turing complete processor in the world in something like 6 months. Obviously, there is no way this is going to be reviewed by humans, or even the code seen by humans. That's not going to happen at all. So the only way we can do this is to just trust the AI with applying security patches through to every computer in the world, and that's a big ask. Another thing is we could use the AI to set up some kind of global surveillance society that could catch potentially problematic uses of AI. That's dangerous for many different reasons, and one of them is that this requires training the superintelligence in strategizing in order to figure out what are the options for other superintelligences and how can those be countered. Again, a very dangerous game. Making money is another example. If Magma makes all the money in the world and literally outcompetes all humans and sits on the entire economy, well, then the Meta's AI can't come in 6 months later and make money, because there's no money left to be made. That's a really, really tall order to do in 6 months to 2 years, and I think a lot of humans are going to be very nonplussed about this. Another option is to gain influence or create new kinds of weapons. Again, I think this strategy of defense is just about the second worst possible strategy you could have, because you're basically doing giving this AI as much power as you can. You're just hitting the accelerator as hard as you can, except in recursive self-improvement. But apart from that, it is the second worst strategy you could possibly come up with. In the comments on the alignment forum, Stephen Burns lists a number of other objections to this. First, he objects that Holden-Kanofsky operationalizes the power of the AI system as total compute. I don't, as far as I could tell from the text, Holden-Kanofsky does not do this. But again, we've only read 1/3 of the text, so I can't really say that he doesn't do that later. Stephen Burns also believes that this is a way too rosy picture. Both that there may be offense and defense imbalances in hardening a system may be a lot more difficult than attacking it, and in particular this is disjunctive, so it means that we might only see one particular place where the AI chooses to attack. The attacker can choose where to attack, in a sense, and that means that it's probably going to take the place where the offense-defense balance is worst from the point of view of the good AI. And of course, as I also said, this requires a lot of trust among humans in the good AIs. I think Steve Burns is too nice that we won't entirely trust the good AIs with the nuclear launch codes. We are totally not going to trust them at all. The good AIs are also going to be less effective. The alignment tax, sometimes called. MAGMA does have a lead, but I think it's a good point. And also that the good AIs are hamstrung by our laws and norms and coordination problems and all these kind of things. Stephen Burns can't really see any way to get around a pivotal act. I think I agree, and I would certainly like Holden-Kanofsky to answer these objections. So that was defense. Let's go to alignment applications. And I believe when Holden-Kanofsky says alignment applications, he's just basically talking about alignment research. This is something that decreases action risk for MAGMA, and possibly allow them to have the same level of risk, but then just increasing the capabilities if the alignment improves in the same way. I'm not entirely sure this makes sense. You could imagine a situation where you have an AI that is very dangerous, 90% probability of being unaligned, and then you press play and it does not take over the world, and it gives you some hints to how to align it, and also how to make it more powerful, and then you roll the dice again, and then you see, okay, if there was a 90% probability of failing, then even though you got lucky, then just re-rolling is a really bad idea. Another option is to share the alignment applications and research with the competitors. This may not be possible without also improving the abilities and the capabilities of the competitors, and it might have a substantial alignment tax, and it doesn't solve the problem of Facebook AI, because if Facebook AI comes out and says strongly, we will not do alignment, period, then presenting them some nice, beautiful research papers about alignment does not in any way force them to use these measures. Holden-Kanofsky is optimistic. A big enough success could solve the problem. I think in general, if you use the word enough and sufficient, then you just create tautologies, right? In general, these the success would need to be really enormous and have literally a zero alignment tax and be improving capabilities at the same time or something like that before other people would want to implement it, and even then it doesn't really force other people to implement it. The third category is coordination related applications, like helping governments and companies coordinate to avoid AI catastrophe. This is probably quite hard. One of the problems with this is we would like to have some kind of acceptable level of risk in order to say we won't deploy systems that are riskier than this level, and in practice, since we probably can't get provable safe AI, that means that the only safe thing to do is to not deploy systems, and that's not something that's really going to work. We could also design more speculative mechanisms where you have like AIs monitoring other AIs and not reporting back other things that they are, and whether they are aligned or things like that. That seems like a really tall order. It requires the AI to be strongly superhuman to do something that we are totally incapable of doing at the moment. And also, doing this requires either very extreme trust in the AI, or it requires some kind of enforcement. Right now, if we are doing nearcasting, I would also say that this kind of coordination looks really hard. Like, in particular, China and Russia seem very, very unlikely to go along with this kind of scheme. The third option here is to create evidence and demonstrations for the risk of misaligned AI. And this is something I care about. And Holden-Karnofsky writes that this is something we will return to later in the document. So I'm not going to talk very much about this right now, but I will give a teaser in that I think Holden-Karnofsky is tackling this problem 1 meter level too high. The fourth way that AI could help with solving this predicament is by deploying powerful technologies to enforce regulatory agreements. Holden-Karnofsky is aware that this brings many concerns. This is not at all something you just go out and do. In order to do this, you need to have regulatory agreements, and to do that you need to have some kind of organization that could do this. And Holden-Karnofsky doesn't describe any of those, but I think in nearcasting, where we assume the world is like it is now, then I think we would say like 3 candidates would be the United Nations, NATO, or the US government. Those seems like the 3 kind of organizations that would be able to lift this burden. It's not enough to have a powerful organization. We would really also like to have some kind of regulatory framework. And the problem with this is we don't have a draft at all for an AI treaty right now. And that means that is another task that either Meta has to do or get an AI to do this. And I think that's also a potentially very tall order. Now, for the technologies that can enforce this regulatory agreement. One may be resource accumulation. I'm quite a bit in doubt about what Holden-Karnofsky refers to here. Like, I could see persuasion being a way to get resources, like you persuade Brazil to support this regulatory agreement, and then Brazil is a resource. But resources can also be other things, like iron ore or whatever. We could also have some kind of surveillance system through very advanced technology. This is, of course, really dystopian potentially. We could improve the framework and advocating for the framework. Improving the framework is probably quite good. Advocating for the framework leans very closely to the dangerous technological development of persuasion. And finally, we have military applications. And I think in this case, what we're talking about here is an explicit takeover, where the US government, with the help of AI, just basically takes over the world. That's the only way I can really interpret this. Holden-Karnofsky also talks about mind uploading in this section. I'm not that pessimistic about mind uploading, but I will say that adding it in this specific section is unfortunate, because mind uploading may be part of the solution to the alignment problem, but I don't think mind uploading should be used as a technology to enforce regulatory agreement. That sounds like really dystopian. The fifth category is advisor type applications, where we get better ideas or plans for how to, like, maybe we can sidestep this problem, maybe we can pull the rope sideways in some way. Just like suggesting things like the regulatory approach. It's possible that the AI will come up with something completely brilliant out of the box thinking that will just solve this problem. I agree it's possible that we'll get a Deus Ex Machina in this way. I think it's very unlikely, and I think it doesn't really count as a strategy to say, like, maybe we'll build the AI and we'll come up with a smart thing that we couldn't have thought of ourselves that will just make the problem go away. That's not a strategy. Okay, in order to get an AI that will not destroy the world, what kind of properties should MAGMA'S AI systems have? Well, the most default one is it should have good performance, being evaluated as good by humans or by MAGMA. And I would expect that MAGMA, if they have 6 months to 2 years of lead ahead of the competition, then they have probably focused on this a lot. Like, you don't sleepwalk to building transformative AI. And that means that in order to focus on other things, then a substantial cultural shift needs to happen in MAGMA, probably. So Holden-Karnofsky's overall strategy is to identify a number of desiderata, nice properties of this AI, and then try to train for all of them, and at least train them to the level where it appears to humans that AI has the property. So some kind of very naive standard. I think it's better than nothing to just make it appear honest if you can't do anything better than that. It is far from being sufficient, but I think in general security is like you have the onion model where you want to have as many of these properties as possible, and I think that's in general a good way to think about it. The first property that Holden-Karnofsky really would like is value alignment. Like the AI should have roughly our values in some way. Holden-Karnofsky is very optimistic about the value of this, the value of value alignment. He says it's the most obviously risk-reducing property. I guess I would kind of disagree with this. I think that if you get very far on value alignment, that buys you surprisingly little safety. If you, for instance, have a utility function that almost represents what human wants, but like is a little off, and then you optimize that as hard as possible, then I think you are almost certainly going to get some kind of strong existential catastrophe. And there are of course problems with value alignment. We don't know our values, and we don't really get, if you just train by feedback, then you don't train for values. And even if MAGMA is very capable of training transformative AI, it's not at all clear that they could do value alignment. Honesty is the second intended property, described as giving non-deceptive answers to relatively straightforward questions. I think in general it's better to talk about deceptiveness than to talk about honesty. I think these are two related but different concepts, like in the sense that my children, sometimes if I ask them who ate the cookie, then they will be dishonest, but they're not deceptive in the sense that they intend to kill me and replace me with someone else and take my power or something like that. Here I'm anthropomorphizing a lot, of course. Holden-Karnofsky says this is easier to define and assess than value alignment. I think it's in fact very much easier, and if it's only for straightforward questions, then I think it might even be, I wouldn't say easy, right, but a lot easier. The way Holden-Karnofsky cash out straightforward honesty is like you have a list, like are you trying to do this bad thing, and then it will just answer no to this. And I think if you have like an enumerated list of bad things, and you try to make sure that it doesn't do this, this is good and it prevents a lot of bad stuff, but it's also a classic suggestion that in the AI safety literature has been discussed and rejected in general, because it pitches our intelligence against the intelligence of a superintelligence. I don't think we should not have honesty, but we need to be honest about the shortcomings, that this is something that the AI is going to try to root around as much as it can. And of course, Holden-Karnofsky is less optimistic than me about how hard straightforward honesty is going to be. Corrigibility is allowing the AI to ensure that the AI allows itself to be altered and shut down if we want to. And this is the overall property that I think is most interesting, and the thing I expect to be crucial. And Holden-Karnofsky is also optimistic about this, but I would note here that it only reduces action risk and not inaction risk. But of course, it's not crisply defined, it's not straightforward to assess. Legibility is the fourth criteria, and I think I was surprised when I got here. Actually, when I first read the text, I thought he meant interpretability, which is the by far most developed practical property of AI systems. Like, there's way more research in interpretability than legibility, and I am surprised that Holden-Karnofsky does not include this. Instead, he talks about legibility, which is like, we don't want to just have the AI give us instructions that just work without us knowing why. We want the AI to explain to us, give us the principles that mean that we can create the instructions, so we have some kind of understanding of what we are doing together with the AI. Unfortunately, I think this is likely to be dramatically less efficient. A lot of the impact of transformative AI is going to be things like writing software. And writing software, if you have one AI that just writes the software and the other AI teaches human programmers to be better programmers, then obviously the one that just writes the software is going to be dramatically more effective. That is all for tonight. Thank you, and see you next week.